Hi all, thanks for joining this Hangout on Air. For those of you that are joining live or for those of you that are watching later, my name is Matt. I'm a mobile product specialist here.
My name is Robert. I'm a mobile measurement specialist here.
And today we'll be talking about how to make the most of mobile. For our agenda today, we're going to start off going over the importance of being there on mobile, then move into some important optimization tips, then go into measurement and how to measure these valuable actions that are happening from your mobile users, give you some investment strategies, and then we'll talk about some interesting success stories and next steps. I'll then pass it off to Robert to go over the importance of being there on mobile.
All right. Thanks, Matt. First off, I think it's important to highlight how important mobile has become for influencing the modern consumer journey. People are accessing the internet on their phones anytime, any day. What are they doing? Well, they're searching, they're researching, and they're taking action. They might be looking for a restaurant later at night, flowers for that special day, or a plumber if the sink breaks. These moments, however small, are crucial for capturing them in these market moments, and you want to be there as they're searching.
Yeah, and I was thinking for myself, there's a new sense of immediacy to this whole thing, where I'm in the market to buy a new record player, and I'll get up in the morning, I'll pull out my phone, do some research then. Maybe I then email myself a link and continue that on my desktop later that day. Then maybe I go back and I search on my mobile phone that night and call a local business to figure out their products. So I'm not waiting till one time to research and then purchase, but it's a bunch of different touch points throughout the day and this new sense of immediacy.
Yeah, a great example. This data point that I'm showing you right now is taken from consumerbarometer.com, and you can pull these graphs and show you advertisers as well. But this ties back to what I'm saying, that people are accessing internet using their phones just as often as they are on desktop. So almost 6 out of 10 people are accessing internet using their phone just as often as they are on desktop. Now that we know that more than half of all queries are from mobile, it's a good idea to show you advertisers their relative mobile query trend within the vertical. We have a tool called the Keyword Planner, and you can specifically enter their own keywords into the tool to show them the mobile trend within their industry.
Yeah, and this is really a great tool. I've worked with clients myself where maybe they think they're in a vertical that mobile is not that important. You then experiment with them and you start entering some keywords that are relevant to their business, and you notice that a lot of the times over half of the queries are actually coming from mobile devices. So a really great way to convince people that mobile is really, really important to their business.
Yeah, absolutely. Another way of highlighting the importance of being visible in mobile is showing you advertisers what their competition is doing. We have a feature in AdWords called the Auction Insight Report, and you can segment this per device. This report will give you a breakdown of competitive metrics, how your advertiser is performing in the auction in relation to their competition.
And when you've worked with clients before, what are some of the metrics that you look at here, and then the advice that you'd give them based off of those results?
Good question. I would start off looking at impression share and average position, and relating these to each other. And let me give you an example. If your advertiser is having a less impression share than their competition, they're not showing their ads as many times. And if they're also having a lower average position, it means they're not showing their ads as many times, and they're also having a lower average position. This tells me that the competition is looking and finding something in the mobile search that your advertiser is not. So that's a good conversation starter. Like, what's the competition doing in relation to your advertisers? What are the metrics we can see and work with here?
Cool.
Yeah, now that we've covered some basics on why you should be on mobile, I'm going to hand over to Matt so you can show or provide some good optimization.
Perfect. Thank you, Robert. Yeah, so let's talk about, now that we understand mobile is important, you need to be there, how do you then optimize for this mobile traffic? So we'll get into a little bit about having the right formats. But then to follow up, how do you then capitalize and get those users to convert after the click? So for capitalizing on this mobile ad traffic, obviously lots of columns, lots of rows here. You all can kind of come back and look at this video later for your specific examples. But what I want to highlight is, depending on your marketing objective, and we have some listed here on the left-hand side, consider what are the different extensions you should be using? What are the different search ads or display ads to be testing? For instance, if you're someone that's really focusing on phone calls, you definitely want to have a call extension, but also consider having a call out extension, experimenting both with text and call-only ads, even some specific display ad formats. So I want you to consider for your mobile user, what are important actions to highlight, what are extensions and ad formats to use to get them to engage with your ad and interact with your site. After that, we obviously want them to convert after the click. So some of you may be familiar with the 25 principles of mobile site design. If not, I definitely urge you to go ahead and research it. You can easily find it through Googling it. And look at those different principles. There's 5 buckets right now that we break them out into. And consider, what are ways you can improve your own client example sites? What are ways that you can reduce friction so that when someone does interact with your mobile ad, they then complete the valuable action that they came there for in the first place? I know myself, and I'm sure you have all been an example where you're researching for some product or service, you interact with the ad on your mobile device, you get to it, and the site is either like you have to pinch to zoom, you click on a form to enter numbers, and it pops up the actual word keyboard. A lot of examples that then get you to leave. And I know for myself, it's not likely that you're going to then go back to that same brand or advertiser after you've had a bad first experience.
No. And that made me think of another advertiser that I saw that wanted to create a cross-device user experience. So you could start your shopping on the cell phone on the way bus back home from work. You could start adding items to your cart, but they can finish the checkout on another device, such as desktop or tablet. And this is a great example of creating a seamless user experience across devices.
That's great. Cool. So now that we've gone through some important optimization principles, starting off with having the right ad formats to get users to engage, and then having the right site principles to get users to complete that valuable action, we'll talk about how do you measure those mobile users, and I'll pass it off to Robert.
Yes. Mobile has complicated the user journey somewhat. Since the emergence of mobile, tracking user behavior across devices is more complicated than ever. So I want to go through a few best practices, what you should be measuring at a minimum, but also how you capture kind of the full value of mobile. I think this kind of image highlights the complexity of the modern consumer path. Like just a few years ago, it was simpler when you started a journey on desktop on the same device and then converted on the same desktop.
Yeah, that one cookie to track
same
everything.
Cookie.
Yeah.
Like a search to a conversion, it's easy, right? Now you look at this, you have multiple interactions. It looks like the flight path and flight radar. It's super complicated, and sometimes it's even not possible to track them throughout your journey.
Yeah, and I was thinking back, our manager recently had a baby, and beforehand, he and his wife were in the market to buy a baby stroller. And he was saying how complex it was from the first touch point to research to when they finally converted. He may search on his phone in the morning, email himself a link. His wife searches on her desktop, emails him a link. They talk about it when they get home. He looks it up on his mobile phone, calls a local store to figure out what products they have. So many different touch points and so difficult to track that consumer journey. But I think what's important here is as things are getting more complicated, there's still really, really good tactics to gain stronger and stronger insights so you can make the best marketing decision. And insights really is the currency of marketing. And Robert will continue.
Yeah, I have a good point. First off, I kind of want to highlight this data point. This is from Think with Google. And it's the percentage of purchase decisions that starts on a mobile phone, but ends up somewhere else. I'm going to say that again because I think it's so important. It's the percentage of purchase decisions that starts on a mobile phone, but ends up somewhere else. So what's the implication of this kind of data point? Well, if you're having a last-click attribution model, last-click desktop view of your search investment, you would potentially missing up to 65% of all the conversion because you're not tracking or looking at this correctly. Yeah. So it's important that we have the right mindset when we're tracking mobile going forward. And as you are having conversations with your advertisers, we should be looking at tracking all types of conversions, but also more importantly, assigning a value to each conversion type. You should absolutely keep tracking the client's key performance metrics like revenue, lead, sales, and assigning a value to those. But you should not forget the offline actions like phone calls, coupon redemptions. Do you have an app? Are people taking action in the app? Let's track that and assign a value to it. The point here is that a lot of the mobile actions might not be the client's key performance metrics. So we need to make sure we're tracking the other metrics as well to highlight really the full value that mobile is bringing.
Yeah, that's great.
And also importantly, don't forget to track cross-device conversions, which is a conversion proxy for how people are jumping between devices and converting. So how would this look like for an e-commerce client, for example? Obviously, we should always keep tracking website purchases, measure revenue with conversion values. We want to make sure we're grabbing all that transaction data, how much we're selling. But what about those actions that are not leading to the sale, like incoming phone calls? I have seen great examples where advertisers are assigning a value to the incoming phone calls as a lead. And one way of doing it is that if you know your average order value, and you know that it's going to take 7 phone calls to take 1 order, you can pretty much do the math backwards and assign a value to that lead incoming. And that's another way of you showing your advertiser how much value mobile is really giving. Maybe not only in sales, but incoming phone calls and other metrics that are affecting your business.
And we'll talk about bidding a little bit later, but I think it really helps for just having more informed decisions on how you're placing value towards which campaigns, which ad groups, which ads. I know an example of one of my coworkers who worked with someone to implement website call conversions,
right,
and assign an actual like discounted average order value to that. And they were able to see much different shifts in where the actual values were coming in their campaigns and bid much more effectively.
Right. No, that's a good example. As I mentioned, previous track purchases from apps. A lot of people on mobile phones are jumping mobile sites to apps. If you have an app, make sure to track all the actions and try to assign a value. We can measure this going forward, so it's really good and powerful way of showing all the engagement that mobile is bringing. And finally, add cross-device conversions to the conversions tab in AdWords, giving you a single source of truth how the most important conversions are affecting your bottom line. Finally, for the measurement part, I was talking about measuring the full value of mobile, and this is where we enter the micro conversions. These are conversions that are not direct sales or leads, but are engagements such as email address submissions, PDF downloads, time spent on site. These are engagements that are important to track, which will lead to a purchase eventually. And this will give you and highlight kind of the full value that mobile is bringing towards your advertising.
So this is kind of tying into that 65% stat that you mentioned earlier, where we're knowing a lot of research and discovery, this upper funnel engagement is happening on mobile devices. And if you can track these types of micro conversions, essentially, you then know which campaigns, which channels are driving that type of engagement.
Absolutely, that's a good point. Another tip is you can use the Google Analytics user ID to get cross-device insights in GA. This is a bit technical, but you will need signing users to get this. I will encourage you to either look for Google user ID on Google search or reach out to your Google rep to get going with this. Great. So measuring mobile is a bit complicated. I went through some best practices. How do you think we should think about investment going forward?
Yeah, happy to talk investment, and let's kind of go over some important strategies. We've listed 3 here that I think are really crucial to keep in mind. Strategy 1 and 2 are really tying into Robert's last section on measurement, assuming you have appropriate conversions and conversion value, and understanding that upper funnel engagement. We've included a 3rd strategy here just for those examples where maybe you're working with clients that don't have a lot or maybe no mobile conversion data at all. What's a good starting place to get yourself to? So for this first strategy, as Robert was mentioning, it's so crucial that you're tracking all conversions that matter and assigning the respective value to those. Once you have this, you can actually see what is your value per click on desktop? What is your value per click on mobile? And knowing that is crucial because, as we're aware, the mobile bid is really an adjustment based off of the desktop bid. So what we can then look at is what we've listed here, the relative conversion value per click. So for example, let's say that your mobile value per click is $12 and your desktop value per click is 10. We then know that mobile is 20% more valuable than desktop. So we can have a plus 20% mobile bid adjustment. Something to keep in mind here as well is you may be adding or taking away conversions due to changes in business. Maybe you're assigning different values to those conversions. Maybe there's adjustments in just seasonal trends. And because of that, this relative conversion value per click is going to change over time. So it's important that you continually check this metric and adjust your mobile bid based off of the results you see here. For the second strategy, this is starting to highlight how do you bid to and capture that upper funnel value, that research and discovery that mobile's driving. And one way to do that is looking at this micro conversion data, tracking things like pages visited, email signups, things that you know where users are engaging from a first touch standpoint. Investing more in those campaigns or channels, actually investing above the relative value per click ratio so that you can invest higher in that research and discovery. And then what you're going to measure is the uplift in conversions across both organic and paid. And the reason we mention both here, we use the term blended, is because if you're just looking at paid, this is going to be only a last click point of view.
Yeah.
We want to see how does investing more in upper funnel engagement, specifically on mobile, positively affect your bottom line conversion rate, having a more holistic view to the whole thing.
Yeah. I have an example, an advertiser who I met who was heavily underinvesting in mobile. And they were doing so based on the fact that they were looking at the last click perspective on their search investment. We had a hunch this was the case, pulled some reports that highlighted how much mobile traffic engagement you're actually getting through mobile, but also urged them to start measuring with the blended CPA, so blended CPA across devices. Once they started doing that and validating the mobile traffic, they started scaling up their campaigns. They increased their conversions with 10% and reduced their CPA with 5%.
Awesome. So for a last strategy here, let's assume that you're working with someone you don't have much conversion data. First step would be, how do you get more conversion data? Think about the conversions to add and actually assigning those values. But a good starting place for setting your mobile bid, one is you can use the keyword planner tool. You can actually look at specifically the device segment there and experiment with, depending on what mobile bid adjustment you set, what forecast are we recommending, or not recommending, but suggesting would actually happen. You can look at clicks, conversions, things along those lines. As a follow-up, you can also go back to the Auction Insights report and see what is the average position compared to the competitors? What is your search impression share compared to competitors? And if you're lower on those metrics, start bumping up that mobile bid adjustment until you can close that gap, essentially.
Yep.
So now that I've covered some good investment strategies to consider, we want to touch on some interesting success stories. Robert will take one, I'll take one. Then we're going to leave you with some important next steps, kind of go over an overall recap, and then we'll leave some time for Q&A.
Sounds great.
All right.
So the first case from a client called Progrexion. They are in the consumer credit business, and they had two challenges when it came to mobile. They didn't understand device fragmentation and how channels were attributing to the bottom line. And they also were aware that they were not capturing the mobile trend. So they want to understand how channels are contributing to the bottom line, but also how to leverage this mobile trend. What we did is we helped them push out mobile ads in search, display, and apps, but also starting to capture this incoming mobile traffic differently, segmenting mobile differently in desktop, with the assumption that people who are researching on mobile were in different mindset than the people on desktop.
Different intent, yeah.
Different intent, right? Yeah. So once they started approaching this differently, they're starting seeing greater efficiency, starting scaling up the campaigns again, and the results can be viewed on the slide there. It's 221% year-on-year growth within the quarter. So their mobile sales just went through the roof as soon as they started pushing out different mobile solutions and started measuring correctly.
Awesome. That's a great example. For our second example, Pro Trainings, they're kind of an interesting company. They do video-based e-learning for things like CPR and first aid certification. And interestingly, their goals were to cater to on-the-go users, which is relevant for mobile, as micro moments, that immediacy that we kind of talked about earlier, and also understanding cross-device attribution. So their approach here was to actually offer a $5 discount for customers who were signing up from mobile, and they created a really important cross-device attribution model, so they could understand how does someone who starts on mobile or even starts on desktop move between different devices from the first touch to the last. What they could see here, interestingly, was 12% of total sales were actually coming from mobile devices. The $5 off coupon, again, kind of like you mentioned, engaging mobiles in a different way, they have a different intent, increased mobile by 35%. And interestingly enough, they discovered that 11% of users completed the training on mobile devices, while the others who may have started on mobile switched devices all the way through before completing the training. So they were able to understand that from their cross-device attribution model. Going back to your point, if you were just having last click, you would have thought mobile only drove those 11%. That's the only value that mobile brought. But in reality, that additional 89% should be attributed somewhat to mobile as a first touch, kind of getting there in the pipeline,
right.
Even though they may have completed the rest of the training on a desktop. So some really great examples here to talk about interesting ways you can leverage mobile, leverage that shift in users, and measure and invest appropriately.
Great example, Matt.
Cool. So let's go over some next steps, and then we will pull up the Q&A. So as you're moving forward and working with clients here, first step I would say is consider your micro moments. Ask yourself those questions. What are people's mindsets when they're trying to research or discover your product or service? What are things that they may be asking, wanting to know before they end up completing that final conversion? As a follow-up to that, start conversations with your technical team around site development and optimization. This is crucial. You could have the best AdWords strategy in the world regarding mobile, but if the site is poor, you're not going to see strong conversion rates. So it's really important to give users a good mobile experience after they have engaged with your ad. Again, I recommend checking out the 25 principles of mobile site design. Following that, measure all actions, assign appropriate values to those actions, and as well measure those micro conversions so you can know which campaigns, which channels are actually driving that upper funnel value. And finally, once you have this insight, invest based off competitive metrics like the keyword planner, auction insights if you do have little to no data. But as the next step and the more important step moving forward, invest based off of the value that you're seeing, as well as start to look at blended CPA more holistically to bid above that and capture some of that upper funnel value from mobile.
Great. Thank you, Matt.
Of course. Thank you all for listening. That was our agenda for today. We'll take some time to take a look at some questions that have been sent in and let you know our thoughts. Okay. So we've got one here. You want to take this one? I'll give this one to Robert. Okay. So the question here is how to determine what micro moments to track and measure.
That's a good question. I think acting like the user is a good way to kind of start. Go on your mobile phone, go to your website, see what kind of actions people can actually take and what actions people really want to kind of do to kind of finish their user behavior. So I'm talking about are people researching on their page? Are they downloading stuff? Are they putting stuff in the cart? Those would be considered micro moments. But as soon as they close a sale, close the form, that will be the kind of the macro, the bigger conversion. So micro moments, I'd say it's any kind of touch point or engagement from the user side that you would value, that would you see as a proxy for the actual purchase at a later point. You can look at data in GA if you have, but I go at acting like the user. What are the micro moments within my user kind of conversion path? But it's not the latest conversion, not the final conversion you want to do.
That's great. Another one here, which I'll take, is how can I use cross-device conversion metric in AdWords? So as some of you may know, it's simple to turn that on. Go to the tools and settings and actually just click that button to include cross-device conversions in your conversion column. It's an interesting question because you can add a separate column to look at that, but in reality, you're just going to then want to bid as you normally do to that conversion column as your one source of truth. All you're doing there is including valuable cross-device conversions in that metric for either your manual optimization or bidding purposes, as well as that's the source of truth that will be used for your automated bidding.
I have another question here, which I think is quite important, and it's, should you separate mobile and desktop in AdWords? And the answer that we recommend is a no. We want to give the AdWords system the best possible ability to track users between devices. If you're separating campaigns on desktop and mobile, you're not going to get cross-device conversions in the same way. You're not going to give the system the best possible ability to track how people are tracking or traveling between devices and converting. And it's also saying, separating campaigns is also a way of saying that there's different users on desktop as they're on mobile, which is not necessarily the case. It's the same user. They just happen to use whatever device they feel like at the moment. And you should let the system have both devices in a campaign to get the full value of mobile.
Great. Thanks, Robert. Another interesting one here to summarize is, should advertisers start building ad strategies around near me and micro moments? We kind of touched on that today. I think the answer is yes. I mean, it depends on your marketing objective or your specific business case. But thinking about, these are types of searches that are somewhat inherent to mobile devices. And obviously, there's certain location targeting because the geo, and you can actually then click over to maps and you can call the business locally. So there's things inherent to phone that make near me type searches very relevant, specifically since we have them all the time. So yes, I think it's a good idea. that may be one type of micro moment that you can be considering. But I would say it's a business-to-business case, and one way to do it is to test out these types of campaigns, test out these types of ad creatives, and see the types of uplifts that you see both in direct conversions as well as the upper funnel micro conversions and cross-device. Let's see here.
How about
this one here?
Yeah.
Cool.
How can I help my clients understand through their own data that mobile is being used in research and discovery? I think we kind of touched, or I touched upon that earlier today. We had an example where the client wasn't valuing kind of the upper funnel part of the conversion journey, the research, the engagement on the site, but only the last click and looking at desktop. So looking at any kind of data points that supports that mobile is bringing a lot of traffic and research, but not converting, is a great way of starting to figure out, well, what is my mobile traffic doing? What is it leading to? If you assume that it's not converting, it's got to do something. You can easily look at an AdWords. You see you bring in a lot of clicks, but perhaps not conversions. And that's a good way of starting to figure out, well, what is my mobile traffic doing in the site? And how can I leverage that?
Yeah, and seeing that uplift in traffic. And I think the important part here is comparing that to the decrease in desktop engagement before converting. So that's kind of, I think, the big trend that I've seen. I've worked with clients where we compare year over year and look at, okay, mobile's increased users by X percentage, and actually users on your desktop site are having less engagement before converting. So they're coming there previously informed, and we're able to know it's coming from mobile due to the large increase that we're seeing there.
Yep. Should we take one last question?
Let's see.
Let's see.
I think that may be.
Any more questions?
I'll take this one. So someone asked about like search ads compared to display ads on mobile. I think it's an interesting question. I mean, display ads are still going to be just as valuable. I mentioned in the previous slide, you want to experiment with all different ad formats. There's similar things to just like how desktop differs on search versus display. I do think that for mobile, though, one thing to keep in mind is micro moments are very intent-based, immediacy-based questions. So a lot of that will happen on the search side. Display is still really important. But when you're thinking about micro moments, one thing that I'll do is I'll look at search terms reports to see what are people searching for? What's the information that they're trying to learn more about my brand, learn more about my business or service, and capitalizing on that with search ads so that you're showing up and capturing them in the upper funnel stage, even if it may not be a search like where to buy shoes, right? So I think that's where search ads are unique in that sense, but display is still absolutely important from a mobile side of things.
Oh, good point.
That's the time that we have for today. We want to thank you all so much for joining. We hope this was helpful, and continue to watch these Hang On airs. We're happy to do them.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.